If you work collaboratively and cooperatively together, you can end up with more. You can end up ahead. You can get a better deal by not being gratuitously nasty.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie Rohde, and welcome to another episode of Ask the Lawyers. We're glad you're with us today. We're talking about the divorce process today, and specifically win-win techniques. And we're happy to have New York attorney Chaim Steinberger with us to talk to us a little bit more about this. Hello.
Good afternoon, Leslie. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I hope you are as well.
I am.
Win-win techniques in the divorce process. What exactly is this?
So it's a different way of being. And when I say win-win, or when I talk about divorce without destruction, I'm not advocating for my clients to get less. But if you study game theory, you realize that if you work collaboratively and cooperatively together, you can end up with more. You can end up ahead. You can get a better deal by not being gratuitously nasty.
Makes sense to me. And you wrote an article called Divorce Without Destruction. And if you're doing it without destruction, is the alternative destruction?
Too many people, unfortunately, think they come into this feeling angry, feeling vengeful, trying to get back at the other side. And I advocate for making peace with it. Look, your spouse is whoever they were. And people generally, when they get out of a marriage, are feeling angry. They act like they're angry with the other person, but very often they're angry with themselves. How could I have fallen for it? You didn't learn anything about your spouse that you didn't know the day you married them. You knew who they were. You just closed your eyes. I love the New Yorker cartoon where one part of a couple looks at the other and says, "So when did the things you loved about me turn into the things you hate about me?" And so we know who our spouses are, and we know what they are. And then when we get to the end of the road, we're angry at them. Why couldn't you just be the person I wanted you to be? And if we can make our peace with that, if we can get over that and say, okay, look, I'm a good guy, she's a good gal, we're not right for each other. I don't have to be angry at her. I don't have to destroy her. I am always going to be the children's father. She is always going to be the children's mother. Let's figure out how we move forward. And it's healthier, it's better. Was it the Buddha who said that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die? So I'm not about letting go. I'm not about, this isn't about not being strategic and not getting the best possible deal for yourself. What I'm talking about is not letting your knee-jerk reaction have you make bad decisions so that 5 years from now you go, oh, gee, I shouldn't have fought over that. That wasn't important. It was this, that was important. But too often, when we're in the throes of anger, when we're feeling so threatened, we can't think logically about the future, and we make decisions that don't serve us well. So I want people to make the best decisions for themselves, to not be nasty just for the sake of being nasty, but to be strategic about it.
So, Chaim, I've had friends go through divorce, and it's gotten pretty nasty. The word you use there, it has been pretty tough. A lot of money spent on legal fees and a lot of time to get through the whole process. So this win-win techniques, the way that you are talking about here, can couples, like some of my friends that have gone through this, can they apply these on their own, or do you need a lawyer to get through this process?
So it's a combination. Usually these are too complicated for people to get through on their own. This is, for most people, it's the first or second divorce they've ever been through. The law is so complicated, and I write a lot about this, that the practice of law is not arithmetic. You can't just pipe up in court and go 2 + 2, Your Honor, and the judge goes 4, of course. It's more like chess. And the same move, if it's made at one point, can make you win the game. But if you do it a step too soon or a step too late, it makes you lose the game. So there's a lot going on here. And I tell people the two things you hope never to need is a doctor and a lawyer. But if you need one, you need the best you can afford, because a bad doctor and a bad lawyer is worse than no doctor and no lawyer. Having said that, this is way too complicated for people to handle by themselves. There are legal issues, there are parenting issues, the ability to move forward for the next 15 or 20 years, and dispute resolution, which is its own discipline. And it's something that I've spent 25 years studying. So I've acted as a negotiation coach for people. And so how do we strategize? What are the positions? Helping people figure out how to get there. It's better if you have a lawyer who understands all of this, who can hold your hand, make you feel safe so that you're not feeling threatened, so that you can have that long view of it. Because usually people fight because they're scared. The more scared you are, the more tunneled your vision becomes, and the less able you are to see options. How many times you give friends advice, and then 6 months, a year later, you're in a situation, you ask a friend advice, and they repeat back to you what you said, and you go, gee, if I was smart enough to tell them that, why didn't I figure it out for myself? And the answer is, when we're feeling threatened, we get tunnel vision. We don't see things that are just outside our field of vision. So you want a good lawyer. You want one who understands how to do this and will carry you through. I participated in a negotiation. It went from 10 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. It was a winter Friday. It was snowing outside all day long. And at one point, because I treated the husband with dignity and courtesy, at one point I was talking and his lawyer interrupted me, and he held his hand up in front of his own lawyer's face and he said, "Stop. I want to hear what Chaim has to say." And I thought that was pretty cool. If I fostered that much trust in an opposing party for him to shut down his own lawyer and have me speak to him, that means I've done my job well.
Sounds like you did. So how is this practically applied, though? Just give us an example of another way you would use these techniques.
So, for example, this is advice anybody can use. Number one is you don't want to wait for the last minute when you're going to negotiate something difficult. Because if you're feeling under pressure, you're going to speak quickly, you're going to grow impatient. You want to start a conversation well in advance. You want to listen more than you talk. Just listen to them speak. You want to ask questions. Use the idea of fairness. Use what we call reflective listening, where you repeat back to the person what they've said. Let me see if I understand you correctly. I think I heard you propose that we do this and this and this. Did I understand you right? And just this idea of letting somebody else feel heard is one of the greatest gifts we can give other human beings. Just listen to somebody. If you care about somebody, just listen to them. It dissipates 50% of the anger, of the antagonism, and it puts them, once you heard what I want to say, I'm more ready to listen to your suggestions or to your complaints or to why you don't like it. But if you didn't even hear me, I grow very impatient and I'm not in a mode where I can listen to you. So if you want the other person to listen to you, you want to spend that extra effort to listen to them and understand what they say. Then use, and this comes from Fisher and Uri of the Harvard Negotiation Project and their famous book, Getting to Yes, you want to use principled negotiation. So use fairness as a touchstone. And so you might say, look, I just want to be fair to you and fair to me. I tell this to all my clients. If you're going to talk to your spouse, if you want to handle negotiation, or if you're in a position where your spouse starts a conversation and I'm not around and you don't want to say, talk to my lawyer, you can say, look, I just want to be fair to you and fair to me. Let's figure out what's fair. When every time they make a suggestion, go, is that fair to you and fair to me? And then let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Now, very often, you need to have a skilled lawyer to tell you different angles of it and why the law sees it one way or the other, because without knowing that, something might seem fair. For example, there was this woman, 58 years old, who came to me who said, I want to retire in a year or two, but I have no money. And I say, why is that? And she goes, well, I got divorced 10 years ago from my husband of 40 years, and he got the pension and I got nothing. And I said, well, why did he get the pension? What did your lawyer say to that? And she goes, well, I didn't have a lawyer. We went to a mediator. And I said, and what happened there? Well, he said, I worked for the pension. It should be mine. And she didn't realize that under the equitable distribution law in New York, a pension that is earned by one party belongs to the both of them. They were equal partners in that pension. She was home caring for the children. He was at work working. They earned the pension. She at home and he there. And so she would have had a right to share in that in whatever way they would have determined as fair. But I guess when they got to the mediator said, well, if that's what you want to do, that's okay by me. And so she gave away her interest in the pension. 10 years later, she wants to retire and she's got nothing. So sometimes you need to have more knowledge to understand why the law views something one way or the other. It may seem fair if you don't know sort of the background, But once you know more about it, you may say, wait a second, fairness requires a different result.
Missed opportunity there. I know that was tough. Hey, Chaim, it sounds like we could use these techniques in many areas of our society today, I think.
Absolutely. I did a presentation called Dispute Resolution 101, how to win the argument without losing the relationship. And it's all about techniques you can use when you get into difficult conversations with somebody you care about, somebody you love, whether it's an intimate partner, whether it's a best friend, whether it's a supplier, whether it's a landlord, whether it's a tenant, whether it's your boss. These apply throughout. Dispute resolution is something that everybody should learn and study, because the better you are, I think I just learned that Robert Frost said this: diplomacy is the art of letting somebody else get your way. And so if you can bring the other person along so that they adopt your way of thinking, then you come out ahead. And if you can do that without creating ill will, without creating bad feelings, then God bless. Then you're doing God's work.
And it is a win-win on both sides in that way. I do want to ask about child custody, because in a lot of my friends' divorce processes, this is what we end up with. The biggest battles come around when it comes to the child custody issues. So how have you applied some of these techniques in dealing with child custody?
So when starting a conversation, that's a great question, because it's a difficult question because people are so tied up in it. And so it's a difficult conversation to have. So whenever I'm in the conference room, whenever I am, whether I'm advocating for one party or whether I'm serving as a mediator for the both, I'll usually start the conversation by saying, Mr. Smith, I want you to know that Mrs. Smith recognizes your role and your status as the father of these children, and she won't do anything to prevent you from having a meaningful, ongoing, reliable relationship with the children. Your love and guidance for the children are so important. And Mrs. Smith, I want you to know that Mr. Smith recognizes your role as a mother and caretaker of the children, and he won't do anything to harm that. And once you set the tone where people don't have to be afraid, there's nothing that's more troubling, there's nothing that's more worrisome to a father than feeling like he may get shut out of his children's lives. There's nothing more troubling to a mother than thinking that her ability to support the children and to have them and to care for them is in jeopardy. So if we give them the comfort of knowing that those threats aren't on the table, then we're ahead of the game. You were asking before, let's say for negotiation, I advocate let's not use a power play. Don't, to the extent you can, don't ever threaten. I mean, I only threaten as a last resort. I'd rather say, let's sit down, let's talk about what's fair. This seems to be fair. And I'd rather have the person come along with me on the basis of fairness rather than saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. Because if we use a force-based mechanism to compel somebody to bend to our will, then inherently at the end of the day, the relationship will be damaged. At the end of the day, the person will like us less, and they'll feel antipathy towards us, and we'll have damaged relationship. And particularly when we have children in common, the children, this lasts not only 18 or 21 years for child support in New York, but when the children are 35, and if mom and dad can't figure out a way to split the Thanksgiving meals, the kids go crazy. What do? Wouldn't you like to be able to walk your children down the aisle together with the children's natural mother and natural father? So the greatest gift the parent can give the children is the permission to love the other parent. There's nothing bigger than that. And for a parent to say, look, I love my children more than I hate my ex, that's the biggest gift you can give your children.
Something very big to say. I love this idea because it does bring about much healthier relationships, not only between the two parties involved, but with the kiddos, because that's really down the road, as you mentioned, what's really important. Chaim, anything else you want to leave viewers with today? Just maybe a takeaway or two that you'd really like people to understand?
Use fairness. Whenever you're negotiating, use fairness as a touchstone. Try to understand the other person's point of view. Repeat back to them what you think you hear them saying and check in and go, did I get it all? Is there anything I missed? And you'll be surprised how often you'll be able to get somebody, how often the person will say, no, I didn't quite mean that. I understand why you think that, but here's what I meant. And then when you repeat it back, and you may have to go back 2 or 3 times until you get it all. because when people speak, they speak quickly, and they say things in a way that they give false impressions. So I did a mediation once, and the wife said, I would like to go back to college. And I said, okay, so what would you like? She says, I want my husband to support me. And I thought this was going to be a killer. But instead of making an assumption, I looked at her and I said, so tell me, what does support mean to you? And she says, well, it would be nice if every once in a while he called me up and he said, you can do this, you can do this. Or if I had a question with homework, he would help me do my homework in college. And I very slowly shifted to him and I said, Mr. Smith, is that something you'd consider doing? And he goes, yeah, I'm happy to do that. And ultimately, in that case, even though they had been fighting for years in court on getting divorced, a couple of weeks later, the lawyers advised me, they said, they're not getting divorced. So apparently I took a perfectly good divorce and I screwed it all up.
And good for you for screwing it all up. Chaim, thank you very much for all of your insight on this topic and for all you're doing.
My pleasure, Leslie.
We want to thank all of you for watching this episode of Ask the Lawyers. Reminder, we'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel too, so you can see other episodes. And if you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, check out AskTheLawyers.com. I'm Leslie Rohde.